Chapter 31. Alex's expression was very heavy, no longer the contempt and disdain he had when facing Theodore and Serafina before. Serafina was surprised, although Harrison was very cold, he still couldn't make the experienced gangster Alex so scared that he couldn't breathe. The window on the warehouse wall threw in a handful of slanted light, cutting the warehouse into sections of light and dark. Harrison crossed the boundary between light and dark, his figure tall and thin. In the moment he disappeared into the darkness, his face looked like a ghost, but as soon as he was immersed in the light, his whole body seemed to shake off the dust and sparkle, elegant and gentle like a god descending from the sky. The specks of light that landed on his hair were warm, but the deep eyes under the messy hair, from beginning to end, were still cold and indifferent. When he was 7 or 8 meters away from Alex, he stopped and looked at him indifferently. "You robbed the goods from Albert Stephen, right?" Alex stiffened and curled his lips, avoiding the issue. "He beat my men to death in Macau, of course I have to teach him a lesson." The people standing next to Alex were seething with indignation, while the people behind Harrison were just like him, without any expression. Harrison nodded. "He killed one of your men, you beat 6 of his men to death, and even robbed the goods I transferred to him." He spoke without any ups and downs, except for the word "I" which was drawn out. This word "I" as light as the wind and clouds made everyone tremble. Alex looked at the group of well-trained soldiers in front of him. He was not afraid of them, he had experienced facing the muzzle of a gun many times. But he was afraid of the man with the deep eyes in front of him. He knew he couldn't mess with this guy, so he had been hiding in Macau where Mason Clark was protecting him. If it weren't for his sister being pregnant, he wouldn't have returned. Unexpectedly, after only returning for a dozen hours, Harrison had found him. "Harrison Lancaster." Alex remained calm. "If that goods are yours, I'll give them back to you." Harrison's eyes flashed with a strange smile. "Alex Martin, you broke the law." Alex clenched his jaw, not answering, but a man beside him suddenly shouted, "So what? Can you kill all of us?" After saying that, the guy raised his gun. At the same time, Harrison raised his hand, making a pose as if he was holding a gun, aiming straight at the guy, his index finger slightly raised. A gunshot rang out. The guy hadn't even had time to fire yet, a hole had already been made in his forehead. He immediately froze, and fell to the ground. He said coldly, "Who else dares to point a gun at me?" The others were scared out of their wits, remembering the rumors about him that they often heard. Fear immediately turned into courage. The group looked at each other, decided to risk their lives, and quickly picked up their guns. Harrison stood straight. Every time he pointed at his opponent, slightly raised his index finger, a gunshot rang out. Whoever he pointed at would die. Just one move had completely broken through the opponent's psychological defense line. He was very confident because his finger-flicking speed was faster than the others, and there were 7 or 8 men in black standing behind him, firing according to his orders. He not only trusted their loyalty, but also their reaction speed and shooting skills. If just one shot missed, he would be the one to die. After 5 or 6 consecutive gunshots, he withdrew his hand, and the others did not dare to cause trouble anymore. Alex's whole body stiffened, his hand holding the gun continuously tightened, feeling guilty. "I am Mr. Clark's henchman. Just because of the lives of a few people under Albert's command, you came to kill me. Aren't you afraid that Mr. Clark will say you broke the law?" Harrison put his hands in his pockets, tilted his head to look at the window above the warehouse, and slightly narrowed his eyes. "You killed 6 of his men." Alex was momentarily stunned, looking around. The number of people who had fallen was exactly 6, his tense mind now relaxed slightly. But Harrison suddenly turned his head, slowly saying, "You also crippled one of his hands." Alex was suddenly stunned, the gun in his hand pointed straight at Harrison, pretending to be tough, but his body trembled. "I won't be killed by you that easily. For Albert's sake, do you want to anger Mr. Clark?" Serafina retreated to the corner of the wall, instinctively biting her lower lip. Although she and Harrison weren't very close, she didn't want him to die. Harrison tilted his head, his long fingers gently massaging his temples. Suddenly, his eyes flashed, suddenly looking at her. At that time, she was squatting in the mess, her body was dirty and filthy, only her fair face was clean. Her two fists were clenched tightly, the corners of her lips were bitten and pale. She looked at him with both fear and worry. For eyes met, the sunlight shone on the left half of his face. Because of the backlight, his eyes looked even deeper than usual. He looked at her quietly for a while, finally simply smiled. The smile was very light, but it was more brilliant than the summer sky. Serafina trembled. At a moment related to human life, why was he leisurely looking at her? Be serious. In just a blink of an eye, he withdrew his gaze. His pupils contracted slightly, staring at Alex's hand, his expression completely serious. In Serafina's position, only half of Harrison's face, which was resolute and ruthless, could be seen. There was no doubt that men at this moment, from the inside out, exuded an irresistible charm. Alex's face was drained of blood, and he trembled violently. Looking at Harrison's gloomy eyes, he understood that if Harrison came here himself today, he would absolutely not let him off. Since that was the case, it would be better to strike first to gain the advantage. He pulled the trigger, but before his finger could move, Harrison leaned back. The bullet missed, and at the same time a very strong kick from Harrison aimed straight at Alex's head. Before Alex could scream, Harrison grabbed his hand, twisted it, and pulled the trigger back. Ah! Alex held his right wrist that had been shot through, rolling crazily on the ground, blood flowing. Harrison stood straight, his long fingers as if performing an art. A few seconds later, the M9 was disassembled into pieces of scrap metal, falling to the ground. It was one of the versions of the Beretta semi-automatic pistol made in Italy. Alex screamed in pain. The people who came with Harrison had cold faces, disarming the remaining men. Harrison quickly walked in front of Serafina, took off his coat and gave it to her. She was stunned, but still took it, mumbled a thank you and obediently put it on. After all, her coat was torn to shreds. She raised her eyes slightly, seeing the rough-looking but delicate man standing behind Harrison. He saw her pale face, remembered that third brother planned to deal with Alex tonight, but as soon as he heard the news from his assistant, he quickly confirmed the location and came to her. At this moment, shouldn't third brother be holding that pretty girl in his arms to ask and comfort her? Third brother is so stupid, he doesn't understand romance at all. He decided to help his third brother, and gave her a mechanical and distorted smile. Serafina's face became even paler. Harrison turned his head and smiled. I told you not to laugh anymore. The other brother silently hid in the corner. Harrison calmly said, I'll take you two to the hospital for a checkup. Seeing her bowing her head and wanting to refuse, he very cleverly added another sentence. It seems like Theodore's injuries are not minor. She looked at her brother's pale face, and only then nodded. Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Harrison was stunned. Clearly more than 10 hours ago she was still calling him Harrison. She took a step forward, stopped, looked at the delicate man. Can I borrow your gun? He gave it to her seriously. She asked Harrison, can you go out first? Harrison glanced at her, turned around and walked out. She looked at Theodore again. You'll stay. Theodore was stunned. What do you want to do? She stood up straight, aimed at Alex, who was lying on the ground, his face panicked. She pulled the trigger without mercy. A gunshot rang out. Alex's whole body shook, his face was ashen, the bullet shot straight into the ground in front of him. You're the only one who's good at shooting? She sneered. Alex, I'll spare you today, you owe me your life. She just wanted to kill him. But if she killed him, she had to shut the mouths of everyone else, otherwise if Mason Clark found out, it would definitely bring disaster to the Beaumont family. She couldn't do anything to him today. She sat next to him, smiling. There's someone watching our match today, right? Otherwise, Emily would have to secretly deal with that pregnancy. How could Alex and Macau know? Alex was speechless. She continued, someone wants us to lose. The person who told you that Emily was carrying Theodore's child only saw you as a pawn. Actually, she had already guessed that the purpose of the person behind it was to borrow Alex to deal with the Beaumont family. Otherwise, why would Harrison Lancaster come so quickly? I guess, when that person told you, they also told Lancaster about your whereabouts. She was just making up this sentence according to the situation, but Harrison came at the right time. she decided to take advantage of Alex's suspicious nature. Alex really believed it, covered his bleeding arm, and gritted his teeth in hatred. Hannah Kensington. Serafina slightly narrowed her eyes. The name had been said, the hatred had been transferred to someone else. She didn't need to stay any longer. Harrison led them to the best military hospital in Beijing. CT scans, NMR scans, etc. were fine, but she really didn't understand the purpose of taking blood tests. He said since she was already here, she should just check her whole body's health, and finally said, "This is your second birthday present, you can't refuse." Who would give a health check as a birthday present? If he was so creative, why didn't he just give her black clothes? Harrison had taken Theodore to the doctor. Serafina had no choice but to quietly go for a checkup alone. On the stairs, she happened to meet Emily wearing sunglasses that covered her face. If she hadn't seen her early in the morning, Serafina wouldn't have recognized her. She stepped forward and blocked her way. Emily was shocked, realizing it was Serafina, and calmed down. "What's the matter?" "You and your brother tricked Theodore out and beat him up badly," Serafina exaggerated, turning her fists. "You told me to find you for something?" Emily knew Serafina was good at martial arts. Her face paled. "I just had surgery, you can't." Serafina looked surprised. "So Lily said you were pregnant for real?" Emily was startled. "Lily Harper?" The two of them had acted together, and Vivian was her cousin, so she and Lily had some friendship. When she told Vivian this story, Lily was also by her side. How could she gossip about this to others? Moreover, she didn't know Serafina, and didn't know that Serafina was eavesdropping outside the warehouse. Since that was the case, Lily must have revealed this secret. But she couldn't say what she was thinking. She pretended. "Pregnant? What did you say?" "I just went to get some Botox." Serafina was even more surprised. "That day, I heard her calling Cousin Alex. I thought. Looks like I heard wrong." She waved her hand, smiling absent-mindedly, but she noticed that Emily's eyes immediately darkened. She shrugged and left. If she had so many enemies, of course she had to give some to Hannah and Lily. The Martin brothers matter was Hannah's doing, but if Lily found out that she was taking the blame for Hannah and becoming Emily's target, cracks would appear in their unified alliance. Serafina walked a few steps and unexpectedly met an acquaintance, Dr. Samuel Scott, pediatrician. When she was little, he had treated her for common colds, but of course, he mainly treated Megan Harper's lonely and empty heart. She went to the reception desk, took out Dr. Scott's contact information and schedule, put it in her bag, and continued to check her health. After the checkup, fortunately, except for a dislocated joint and bruises, neither of them had any serious injuries. When they left the hospital, it was already midnight. Who would have thought that the first day of her 20s would pass so chaotically? She remembered, "That's right, my car and Theodore's are still at the warehouse." Harrison said very calmly, "I've already sent someone to drive back to the Beaumont family." She was stunned, and quietly lowered her head. "My things are still in the car, I plan to go back to the dormitory today." After staying in the hospital for a while, she gradually calmed down. She remembered very clearly that she had to leave the Beaumont family. She didn't want to try to win over her family's affection anymore. It was both tiring and painful. Theodore was startled when he heard her say that, and looked at her who was hidden in the darkness, lonely and weak, as if she could be swallowed up at any moment. His heart suddenly ached. He thought, she stood there quietly, looking very normal, but the things that happened these 2 days must have broken her heart. He suddenly hated himself. Not only did he not protect her but also rubbed salt into her wound. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but his throat was choked, unable to utter even half a word. Harrison glanced at her figure, his voice light. "It's very late, we shouldn't drive. I'll take Theodore and you home first, get your things and go to your school." "Okay?" Serafina originally didn't want to bother him, but he said he wanted to take Theodore home. It was inconvenient for her to refuse on Theodore's behalf. She could only tacitly agree to get in the car. On the way, the atmosphere was very strange. Harrison originally did not like to talk, so he kept his head down in silence, not knowing what he was thinking, only occasionally tilting his head, glancing at Serafina. Serafina sat to one side, leaning her head against the car window, looking at the peaceful night scene outside, without pain, without suffering. The first birthday with Theodore was really shocking, very complete. She smiled, closing her eyes in satisfaction. Theodore was very worried about her condition, but seeing that she seemed to be sleeping, it was not convenient to ask too much. Now he was more interested in Harrison. "Mr. Lancaster, I heard that you were a Special Forces soldier before." Theodore was very excited. "Yeah." Harrison was very calm. "No wonder you have such a spirit, know how to fight close combat, know how to unload guns, not to mention you are very brave, very decisive." Theodore expressed his admiration. "Oh." Harrison was very indifferent. Sigh. "If I had known earlier, I would have joined the army to study and train, if so, I could be like you." Theodore fawned. Serafina's eyelashes trembled. "Theodore, can you please keep some dignity? You've only met him a few times and you already call him brother so sweetly. In your past and present lives you have never called me sister." Moreover, she tried to teach Theodore a lesson 2 or 3 times a day, but it was useless. Harrison only needed to say yes and yeah to bring Theodore back to the right path. She felt like such a failure. Humph. A person with no dignity like him, she would wrap it up and tie a bow and give him to Harrison as a younger brother.